addendums. Do you guys know what addendums are? Because they're sort of hidden. Okay, so the addendum is something that you're allowed to write if you want to. They're not required. In fact, they should rarely be used. An addendum is an additional sheet of paper that attaches to your application that explains something that maybe looks bad, right? So like if you had a semester where your grades plummeted or something like that, and you want to explain why that happened, right? So it's a way to sort of like reference maybe a mistake or some difficulty that happened. If you had a death in your family and you had to leave for 2 months, well, that should be known. You don't just want to look like you dropped the ball, right? But you have to be very, very careful with addendums. I can't stress this enough. Addendums need to be taken seriously, right? A reason why your grades dropped cannot be, I joined a fraternity and just got sidetracked, right? Because not only does that not explain or excuse, right, the grades, and just a delicate topic, but you know what I mean. But it also makes you look like you're making excuses. So the addendum should only be used if there's something serious that's happened. And then you absolutely should use it. We want to know if something's happened to you. Because if something did happen and you overcame it, and then like continued on to get your degree, that's fantastic, right? But something like, you know, I overcommitted myself to clubs, or I sort of lost my way and had an existential crisis, right? That stuff needs to be explained further for it to justify an addendum. Now, an addendum is required if you have a criminal record. A criminal record does not mean that you don't get to go to law school, but you have to explain why you have a criminal record in your addendum. The worst thing that you can do is try to hide it. If you hide it, I mean, just, you know, make the inferences. You're going to be a lawyer and you hide your criminal record. Not good news, right? But it's okay. You just want to be honest and say it out. And even if it's something like you have no excuse, you're just young and dumb, that's fine. Just lay it out there. Right? So that's what the addendum is for. Something serious or some criminal record that you may have. This doesn't include like speeding tickets, but you know, underage drinking, something like that, that needs to be explained and addressed. Okay, so LSAT, quickly. I just wanted to give you an idea of how the LSAT works. The LSAT has 2 sections that are logical reasoning sections that ask you to evaluate arguments, right? What's wrong with this argument? What would make this argument better? What's the conclusion of this argument? Those sorts of questions. There are about 50 questions in those. There's a reading comp section, which you may be like, oh, I got that. I did an SAT, I did an ACT, it's dramatically different, all right? They're testing to see if you can read like a lawyer. And this is the thing that I actually find that students forget to study for. And every time, like 2 weeks before the test, they want help with reading comp. And I'm like, oh, you haven't studied it yet, huh? You got to start that early. So reading comp, 26, 28 questions. Logic games tends to be the one that people are the most worried about. It's the most infamous part of the test. But you'll notice that logic games, there are only 22 to 24 questions on it. And it tends to be the least important. You can blow logic games and do really well in the other part of the test and still score in the 160s. So do keep that in mind. You can blow it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
I was, just to emphasize how much of a social life I had, I tried it once. So I was like, I'm just going to not do this self-logic and see what happens. That was my Saturday night. Okay. So, yeah. Then there is an essay which is unscored. Doesn't go into your score, but it is important just because you don't want to not do it, and then it looks really bad for you, right? You just don't want to write an essay. Now, another thing I just want to mention, and then I'll open up to questions, is that this is the bell curve for the test. Now, you'll notice that a 90% score is a 164 on average. Sometimes it's 163, sometimes it's 165, and that's getting about 83 correct answers. While a 151 is the 50%, the average median, and that's getting 61 correct answers. And just to make this just hit home for you guys, let me find my stats on this. Alright, so an 80th percentile via the 90th percentile. Percentiles are how LSATs, or not LSATs, law schools make their decision. They decide about, they want people that are in the 80th percentile or something like that. The difference between the 80th and 90th percentile is the difference between 30,000 test takers. Alright? 30,000 test takers. It's a big number. Which, on the score, is the difference between a 159 and a 164. Now, the difference between scoring a 159 and 164, and therefore the difference between leapfrogging over 30,000 applicants, is the difference between getting 8 additional correct answers. Right? So it's a little intimidating, but it's also like, if you study properly, you can do that. Absolutely, right? And the nice thing about it is, since they go based off percentile scores, it's not like getting that additional 8 correct puts you ahead of, like, I don't know, the 26,000 that did, a little worse than you. It puts you in that whole bracket, right? The entire bracket is what matters.